This is Jennifer Palamas from Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is Barbecue Central.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intention?
Happy to have you aboard here for the Really Big Barbecue Show.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan. So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle.
Charbono! It's all about the Charbono, dude!
Succulent fish! What?
He ate 54 wieners.
But listen, Lavernius, shake your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
You could use it to fight off creeping marauders looking to take your steaks off your grills.
I just like being anywhere with Junior, Senior, and Diva.
Sounds like a whole other type of movie.
Wow. Yeah, really. Keep it hot, keep it clean, keep it lubricated.
We have top men working on it right now. Ooh, top men.
Hey, welcome to the second hour. Trying to get this stuff squared away. Apologize. You know, they upgraded they upgraded Skype, much to my chagrin, by the way. Holy crap. Yo. And let's see. Here we go. Yeah, they upgraded Skype, much to my chagrin. And I hate every second of it. Who else have we got coming on here tonight? We have Chris Finney's going to be coming on tonight. Holy love of Pete. Just let me call my friggin' people, for crying out loud. Chris Finney coming up. Also, we have Brian Pollock. And where is he? Where is he? There he is. All right. Now, let's see if this works. Here we go. Well, we're just going to hope it works. All right. We are breaking the normal. What I would call normal. Whatchamacallit. Let's have can I have the normal view back, please? Is that possible? Is that possible? Oh, my Lord. What a mess. This is all getting edited out in the editing process. All right, here we go. We're going to be getting into the steak roundtable tonight. First off, if you want to jump in, if you want to call, you can do so toll-free. Give your own opinion if you want. If you have some questions you want to ask this expert panel that we have tonight, 877-448-0433. You can also email the show, Greg at thebbqcentralshow.com. All that being said, it is now time for the very first grilling roundtable here on the show, and it is the Barbecue Central Radio Show Roundtable Grilling Edition, all about steak, and we have an expert panel. Joining me tonight is Chris Finney, either in South Carolina or North Carolina, one never knows. We also have Brian Pollock from Carroll Stream, Illinois, and that is just west of the Windy City of Chicago. And then rounding out the panel, Chuck Dorak from Easton, Pennsylvania. Guys, I appreciate you taking time out to join me here on the Steak Roundtable. And we will do, as we always do, starting out every single roundtable, barbecue or not. What do we have for the arsenal of grills and cookers and barbecue pits and all that other stuff? And we'll start with Chuck.
Oh, geez. I've got a Charbroil Professional 4-burner grill, gas grill. I've got a Meadow Creek Caterers Delight 108 with a charcoal, nice big charcoal cooker on the back. And I've got an FEC 100 in my backyard for all the bigger low and slow cuts meat. And I just recently got rid of my 2 Weber Smoky Mountains. Was able to pass them on to some newbies.
Excellent. Brian, how about you? What do you got there cooking on?
Well, I like to kind of span the horizon there with
I've got a brand new, actually, Weber Smoky Mountain. So I should have come to Chuck first, I guess. I could have bought one of his. And I've got the Weber kettle. Of course, I've got the thing that everyone will cringe at. I've got the gas burner there from Great Outdoors for the quick hits. But probably my favorite one is my Big Green Egg.
Finney, what do you got?
I've got two Superior smokers, one mounted on a trailer that I use for competitions, and I've got two Primo ceramic cookers, 3 WSMs, and 4 Weber kettles in varying sizes and colors.
Some would think you have some type of problem down there.
I've got lots of problems.
But grilling and barbecues aren't one of them, right?
Not so far.
All right, so we'll move on to the first question. And obviously, if you don't have as many as Finney does, this might be a little easier for you to answer. So we'll go back to Chris on this one. Do you have a personal favorite to do your high-temperature grilling on, Chris?
I use one of the 2 Primos. One of them's an extra large oval, and the other one's the oval junior. I don't work where I live, so I've got the small one with me wherever I'm working, and then the big one's at home. So if I'm at home cooking a steak or grilling anything, it's on the Primo there usually, and it's on the Primo Junior here.
You don't work where you live. You don't work where you live. In a related story, Chris, I don't shit where I eat. All right. Brian, do you have a favorite cooker to grill on?
I do, actually. It's my Big Green Egg. I have the extra large, which is, for those who don't know, I mean, similar to the Primos. It's a ceramic cooker, and you can get the temperatures nice and high for searing, and then it adjusts real quickly down to grilling temperature.
What about you, Chuck?
Well, when I'm out catering, I use the Caterer's Delight from Meadow Creek. The barbecue 42 on the back turns into a nice charcoal grill, and I use that on my catering jobs at home. It depends on what's going on. The kids got some sports going on. I use the gas. If I'm able to kick back and relax, it's the Weber.
All right, now, before we get into any prep, and why not run down any grill cleaning procedures that you guys personally go through before you do any type of cook on the grill? We'll start with Brian. What kind of cleaning procedures are you running through?
Wait, you're supposed to clean the grill?
No, you don't have to, right?
Yeah. No, I always do. In fact, I typically clean the grill both before I use it and then after every cook as well. I typically like to get the grill running up on a real high temperature, let that just heat way up there, and it burns off anything that's accumulated on the grates. It turns it to an ash, and it'll just scrape right off with a brush and just rubbing it.
What about you, Chuck? What are you doing to clean off?
Well, after I'm done, I like to give it a brush down and get all the stuff that's on there off. And if for some reason I forget to do that, and I come back and it's been a while since I used it, and it's really bad, I've been known to throw tinfoil over the grate and get it super rocket high, and it burns everything to a white ash.
Finney.
I take a piece of aluminum foil, wad it up, grab it with a pair of tongs, and rub it over the grill grates.
Very simple, but clean grill is a healthy grill. I'm sure we can all agree on that. So we'll move. I'm sorry. Do you prefer charcoal or gas? And we'll start with Finney.
I don't own any gas grills.
All right. So we know what you prefer. Brian, do you prefer charcoal or gas?
I actually use them both. In fact, and I use wood when I'm cooking. But I think as far as I'm concerned, depending on what I need and how quick I need to get going, I get good results across the board.
Chuck, favorite between charcoal or gas?
In the past 2 to 3 years, I've been a charcoal convert, but, when I was cooking in restaurants, it was gas. So, but I'm a charcoal convert now. I won't do anything. If I do a catering job on site at somebody's house, it's all charcoal for me.
Chris Finney, Brian Pollock, and Chuck Dorak joining me here for the Steak Roundtable, first ever on the second hour of the show. All right, so let's get into the preparatory issues and processes. We'll start with Chris. Purveyor of meat choice. You going to a local butcher? You going to a big box store? You go to the grocery store? Where are you going to buy your meat?
I'm usually just going to the grocery store. They're convenient, and that's what I'm close to. Usually, I don't plan ahead that I'm going to have a steak or anything. It's usually hey, I feel like a steak today, so the grocery store is my only option in that case.
What about you, Chuck?
I'll generally get my steaks from the grocery store if there's a special event coming up, anniversary, wedding, birthdays. I actually will go to a local farmer that has does his own butchering and get grass-fed, grain-finished beef from him.
Caught me mid-sip. Brian, where are you going to get your meat?
Typically, if it's just for the family and real small scale like that, there's a local butcher shop. Sometimes if there's specials at the supermarket. If I'm doing a bigger family party or, especially like fillets or something like that, I like to get over to Restaurant Depot because I can buy larger quantity fillets and actually trim them myself, serve a lot more people for a better price.
All right, very controversial question that we're about to hit here. I'll even throw in the drum roll. In your honest opinions, your own personal beliefs and opinions, best cut of steak and why? We'll start back with Brian. Brian?
Oh,
Nope.
I'm losing you there on the contact.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
There we go.
Best cut of steak and why, in your opinion?
Yeah, you're right. Controversial. I'm actually going to go with the ribeye. And I like the ribeye. It has a lot of marbling in it. The fat is where the flavor is at. And if you do up a ribeye, you can get it just as tender as a lot of the standard fillets out there, but it comes with a lot more flavor right off the bat than the fillets do.
What about you, Chuck? What cut of steak do you think is the best and why?
I go with the ribeye myself, but lately I've gone over to a sirloin steak. I've gotten it just as flavorful and tender as even a good porterhouse. I've done right. Did right by that steak. I'd say either a ribeye or sirloin.
Plus, you're getting value for the sirloin, right?
Oh yeah, it's much cheaper.
Fin Dog, best cut of steak and why?
I'm going to go with the ribeye also. So your question wasn't that controversial after all.
I go with the ribeye as well, but whatever.
Yeah, the fat content and the flavor, you just can't hardly beat it. So.
All right, we'll stick with you, Chris, on this next question. Thickness when you're getting your meat cut, where do you like to see them at?
About 1.5 inches.
Would you go thinner or would you always go thicker?
I don't really care. I would rather have them somewhere between 1 inch and 1.5 inches, and then I'm happy.
What about you, Brian? Brian?
For me, sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, that's all right. Thickness.
For me, I like to run about an inch and a quarter or so. Typically, I generally won't go very much less or more, but if I got a choice, that's where I'm at.
What about you, Chuck? Thickness?
I'm right in the inch and a half area also. Nothing less than an inch, nothing more than 1.5 inches.
Why not anything more than 1.5 inches? What do you hate more than 1.5 inch steaks for? Why do you discriminate, Chuck?
Anything over 1.5 inches, you run it being rare in the middle and overdone on the outside. It's just a bear to keep it right unless you do the reverse sear, and I usually just don't have the time to do the reverse sear.
All right. Next question, and we will go to Brian for this one. When you get it back home, are you doing any additional trimming to the meat before we start the rubbing or the marinating, whatever else we're getting into? Any other trimming that you do?
It all depends on the cut of the meat and if there's any hanging fat or anything like that. Typically, I try to buy pieces that are, really nicely formed. They don't have extraneous hanging pieces, so very little trimming typically.
What about you, Finn? Are you doing any extra trimming?
Not really. Every once in a while, when I go to the store and get ribeyes, they've got a large chunk down on the small end of the ribeye, and if that's the case, I'll cut that off. But otherwise, I leave everything on there.
Chuck, any additional trimming?
No, generally not. The store, if I go to the grocery store, they do a real good job. If anything, I get upset with the farmer's butcher that he cuts too much off.
All right, so let's look at this dry rubbing, or perhaps there's even some of you guys might be marinating. Is anybody doing any type of dry rubbing, or perhaps you're doing something? Are you injecting steak? What's the deal with flavor? And we'll go to Chuck to start.
Well, I like to try and, if I got a good quality ribeye, I like the flavor to stand out. And for me, it's nothing more than salt, pepper, and garlic. And if I know if I can get them the day before, I'll salt them up to 12 hours ahead of time. It doesn't draw out that much moisture, and it gives a good penetration to the meat. When I'm doing my sirloins, I actually use a combination of 2 dry rubs by Dizzy Pig that I found have a great flavor, and I do that. I'll dust them up about a minimum 4 hours before I grill them, and I get a nice flavor penetration on the sirloins, and then that gets a nice crust when I'm able to when I'm searing them up.
Finney, are you rubbing? Are you injecting? Are you marinating? How does one get flavor into your meat?
Oh, I'm a simple steak cooking guy. It's salt and pepper and garlic. Every once in a while, I'll throw a little bit of Tony Chachere's on there, but other than that, it's usually just salt, pepper, garlic, and maybe some melted butter, if anything.
Are you doing it well in advance, or are you doing it, no specific time prior?
It's really no specific time. You've known me a lot of years, Greg. I don't think too far in advance for doing stuff. So, if it's on there a half hour, that's probably about as long as for a steak as I season in advance.
What about you, Brian?
I'm probably in that same boat there as Finney with, I'll take the steaks out and I'll let them sit, and they'll be out for about a half hour in that time frame as they start warming up a little. That's where I'll usually put a dry rub on there. I've never injected a steak. I can't imagine actually doing that to a good piece of beef. It's a little different than barbecue, where you're typically working with different kinds of meat or pork, which require that injection. But no, good meat, a good dry rub, nice crust, you're good to go.
Now, I assume everybody's, Brian just alluded to it, but I assume you're letting it sit out from the refrigerator on the counter for a certain period of time. Chuck, you letting the meat kind of warm up or getting up to room temperature prior to putting it on the grill?
Yeah, I'm definitely a minimum half hour. I've let them sit out up to an hour, and I haven't had any problems with them, anybody getting sick, let's put it that way.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. Letting the meat sit out there for 30 minutes isn't going to give it enough time to grow what's going to be considered bad bacteria that you're going to cook it off anyway. It's going to hit the flames and be gone. So 30 minutes is about where I'm at, just based on my ritual. Pull it out, do everything else, come back, get the steaks.
Finney, you in the 30-minute time frame as well?
Yeah, but it's probably 30 minutes max, and it's not a food safety thing. It's just I go out and light the Primo and come back in and take the steak out and season it up, and by the time the cooker's ready, it may be a half hour, it may be less. So it's not a food safety issue. It's just the order I do things in issue.
Sounds like you have an efficient cooker issue.
I guess.
Yeah. Anything else?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Brian. If I can just add, we're all talking a real similar process to that. And I think the point I maybe we're all working towards is you don't want to take the meat straight out of the fridge onto the cooker because it's real cold on the outside. It's even colder in the middle. By letting it sit out for that little bit of time and start bringing it up, you're going to get a much more consistent cook on your meat and be able to, gauge its doneness better.
All right, so is there anything else that anybody is doing to the steak prior to going on the grill? And we'll go back to Chuck.
Other than seasoning it, like I said, depending on when I get the steaks, if it's a day before, like I said, up to 12 hours ahead of time, I'll just give it a good salting, and then I'll put my pepper and garlic on, but I usually do it at least 4 hours in advance. Going back to the temperature, like I said, sometimes I've let it sit out up to an hour. If the meat gets up to 140 degrees, according to our good old FDA, it claims that all the bacteria is cooked off. So even if there is anything starting in that 31 to 60-minute time frame, it's killed off by the time it's cooked. So,
Finney, doing anything else?
No, nothing special.
Brian?
The only thing I will do, and this kind of goes back to your trimming question from before, is if I've got a steak that actually has a little fat rind on there, which you often find like on the ribeyes, if I'm not cutting off the chunk, but you find it's a real thick piece going around, I will actually cut that through down to the meat every inch or so that I'm not taking the fat off and getting rid of the flavor, but it'll also keep the steak from curling up. So that's part of my prep.
And one more question here before we get into the cooking portion. This coming in from Clint in New York. Do any of you dry age steaks yourselves? And we'll go to Chris for that.
I have, but it's when I bought a larger primal cut. I don't age individual steaks.
Too much work? Don't think it does anything? Any particular reason?
Well, I think if you're doing individual steaks, you're going to end up cutting off too much meat from the parts that's drying out and oxidizing. So, with a big cut, the percentage you're going to cut off due to the aging process is a whole lot less than if you were doing smaller steaks. So I just don't do it. Like I said, if I've got a big primal cut, I'll age it, but that's usually not the case.
Brian, you ever dry age steaks yourself?
No, I haven't.
Chuck?
No, I don't dry age. Again, like Chris, if I get like a big standing rib roast, that I'll cut the bone off and make my, pull my rib steaks out that way. If I get the big 10-pounder, yeah, I'll dry age that in the refrigerator for a few days. Give it a chance to break down, but if it already comes individually cut, no, I don't dry age. I could buy them dry age, but I don't dry age them myself.
All right, so now we'll move into the cooking portion of this show here in the second hour, the After Dark segment. 877-448-0433 if you have a question. Greg at thebbqcentralshow.com if you want to email. We're being joined by Chris Finney, Brian Pollock, and Chuck Dorak. And again, we'll move on to the cooking portion, and we'll start with Brian. How soon in advance will you fire up the grill, Brian?
How far in advance of actually cooking?
Yeah.
Right after I take the steaks out.
All right, so you're about 30 minutes
30
or so?
Minutes.
Chuck, how about...
I'm right in my 30-minute time frame there, yeah.
How about you, Chuck?
Yeah, the same. I'll take them out. I'll go fire the grill up at that point.
Finney, you're in that 30 minutes or less, I would imagine.
Well, it's about that. But as I said earlier, I actually go out and start the grill, and then I come in and take the steak out. But it's still about the 30-minute time frame. The Primo heats up really quick. I mean, if you light enough charcoal in it to start with, it's hot in 15, 20 minutes.
All right, Chris, we'll stay with you for this question. Do you have a temperature preference to cook your steaks at, grill temperature-wise? Or perhaps, how do you set your grill up when you're ready to actually start cooking the steaks?
Well, I think this is where I'm going to vary from everybody else, but who knows? I actually start cooking my steaks at a low temperature, somewhere between 250 to, well, actually not even 250, between Probably around 225 usually to start with, and then I increase the heat later.
What about you, Brian?
So yeah, that would be where we differ. I generally go for the sear first, which is a real common practice, I think, among steak grillers. So, in using the egg, it's real easy to adjust the temperatures up and down. So I like to crank it up into the 600 or 700 degree range. I get that immediate sear, flip it over, get a sear, and then I'll bring the temperature right back down very quickly, into the 400, 450 range, and I'll finish cooking out through there.
How about you, Chuck?
That depends on the situation for me. If I'm catering, I'll go for the hot and fast sear. And then generally, because I have to do so many steaks, I'll actually go ahead and take them and then throw them in the pit to hold them and bring them up to temperature slowly after that. At home, the reverse sear if I get a chance. But so again, sometimes I have to do them hot and fast also at home. So I go either way.
All right, so regardless if you're searing the steak up front or on the backside, let's cover searing right now. Searing, is it sealing in the juices, yes or no? And we'll start with Brian.
Yes and no, actually.
No, it's got to no. It's got to be yes or no. It can't be both.
I'm going to go with a yes. To me, I get a better result out of searing.
Sorry, Brian, you're wrong. Chris, does searing seal in the juices?
No.
Of course not. Chuck, how about you? Does searing seal in the juices?
Had you asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have said yes. But now that I've seen the data on the reverse sear, I'd say no. It doesn't seal it in. Why do I still do it though? Because I have to, mostly because of the catering. But I see the data about the reverse sear, and I'll go with Chris. It doesn't lock in the juices.
All right, Brian, let's go back to you. I know it kind of came off like I was a dick, but it's my show. Why
you are a dick?
I know I am a dick. Why do you think, or what's your proof that searing seals in the juices of the meat?
Oh, if you want proof, I don't know. Wait, hold on, let me check. No, I don't have scientific evidence.
Or why do you feel? I mean, what's your ground to stand on?
I'm going to fall back on the really bad excuse of that's the way I learned and that's the way I've always done it. And I've actually not done any research on the reverse sear. I've got Google up on my computer right now, though.
No need to get Google. You just look to the guest to the left. Chris Finney invented reverse sear. So we'll actually be covering that here in a little while. But all right, so I just like asking that question just for fun. But Brian, in your opinion, aside from I guess sealing in the juices, if that's what you believe, do you think that searing does anything else to the meat, and that's why you do it?
Well, I like the crust that I get on the outside when I sear. That starts to form up on there. To me, it gets a nicer, crisper crust than taking a low, slow approach to it.
What about you, Chris? Why do you like to sear a steak?
Oh, searing is all about the flavor. The meat has sugars and different things in its core structure, and when you sear it, it caramelizes it, and caramelization is flavor. So I mean, if you cook without any type of searing or anything that builds a crust on there, you're just missing out on flavor. So you've got to have sear or something to give you that flavor.
Chuck, why do you like to sear a steak?
I have to go with everybody else. It's the caramelization, it's the crust, it's the golden brown, delicious flavor that you get out of it. It's just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like a good seared, crusty, well-seasoned steak.
All right, Chuck, we'll stay with you on this. Do you have any advice while you're actually doing the real-life cooking of it? Number of times to flip, where you like to keep the temperature of the grill? Do you have different zones? How are you managing the fire?
I manage my fire by keep trying to keep. I actually do 3 zones. I have one that I try to keep rocket hot up in the 700-800 area. The next one down is, in the 400, to keep it cooking. And then I have a holding area where it's, a little lower. And as far as flipping, it's 4 flips for me. And that's not actually a flip. It's a turn, a flip, and then a turn. So it's 2 turns and 1 flip. The turns are to get your grill marks, to make it as crusty brown and delicious as possible. And it's just 1 flip. Don't play with it. You got to let it sit in one spot. You have to let it caramelize. And that's the only way it's going to. If you keep flipping it back and forth, it's never going to caramelize.
What about you, Brian? What's your whole cooking method?
Well, as far as flipping and turning, I'm right on par with that. Let a steak sit. It'll get its grill marks. You give it a turn. You get your diamond. Flip it. Turn it again. You've got a beautiful look on both sides. And again, the whole zone cooking method. You always want to have a spot on your grill that's going to be a low temperature or very cool temperature in case you have flare-ups or if you're doing multiple pieces that start to get done. So, you have, 2-zone, 3-zone, depends if you look to adjust your temperatures or how you want to go about that. I think we could probably talk about that for a half hour. But yeah, definitely have multiple zones so you have a place to move that meat in case it starts to cook too fast.
Chris, what's your process?
Well, since I'm starting at a much lower temperature, and I will say I don't cook my way every time, but I'll stick with that. 80% of my cook, I'm not touching the steak at all. It's in the cooker on low heat, usually indirect even, and I don't turn it, I don't flip it, I don't do anything to it until the last portion of the cook. And then if I want to impress somebody with grill marks, I'll do the turn and flip. If I don't, I'll sear it on one side, flip it over, sear it on the other side, and I'm done.
All right. Do you feel what finished internal temperature you don't have to give me like a specific degree, but as far as rare, medium rare, etc. What do you like to take the steaks to finish in your estimations for a perfect steak? And we'll go to Chuck.
Perfect steak is, for me, is nothing over medium, so that's 140. I take the steaks up to 130, and I'll take them off, and I'll tent them, and I'll let them carry over for the extra 10 degrees. And then the juices settle out, and, for the 15 to 20 minutes, you let it sit, and you put it out for everybody to dig into.
And you are using a thermometer to temp your steaks?
Yeah, I do. I basically I take the if the steaks are whatever different size, and and you get a lot of people. Some type people like it mid well or medium well done. Then what I would do is the thicker, the bigger steak, I temp that to 130, and that's going to be for the people who want, the medium, the perfect steak, and the smaller steaks, those are going to be done a little bit more. So you take the largest steak to 130, and then the smaller ones are for the people who like the medium or the well done ones.
What about you, Brian? What's your perfect finishing temperature for a steak?
I don't go by temperature as often. I go by feel. For over the years, I've gotten to the point where, it takes a lot more practice, but, you can typically press on a steak and see about how well done it is. I'm not particular if it's medium rare or medium, which is about the zone I go for. So somewhere right in that area, which is the 135 to 145 range, for those two donenesses. But primarily by feel. If I've really got to get something done, well, if it's well done, just let it sit there. It'll eventually become a puck, and then somebody can eat it. But for medium rare, medium, it's a feel.
What about you, Finney? Perfect temperature for steak?
I like a good medium rare steak, and I go by touch. Also, I used to do the thermometer thing, but I would also touch it as I was taking the temp, just so I'd start getting a knowledge of what it felt like. But unfortunately, I've been buying better meat lately, and it stays soft longer. So I have ended up overcooking some steaks just because they were more tender than what I was used to. But medium rare is what I really like. I like anything up to medium, but medium rare is what I shoot for.
We're getting a question coming in here from the listening field from Nibble Me This. If you end up with a lesser quality steak to cook, do you have any special tricks to make up for it? We'll go back to Chris.
Yes, I do the reverse sear on it. That makes a cheaper cut of meat slightly better than it is. It's not going to turn shoe leather into filet, but the actual process of the slow cooking up front tenderizes the meat as it cooks the first portion of the cook. So it does turn out a little better. I mean, if you've really got a crappy piece of meat too, marinate it in something and make it where you can't tell it's crappy anymore.
What about you, Brian? Any tricks for crappy meat?
Well, yeah, and to that same point, I mean, if it's really crappy, I don't typically ever wet marinate steaks and such. If I were to get a piece that were that bad, I probably would go for the wet marinade. It'll help to break it down a little bit more. But typically, if it's just something a little bit lesser quality, I'll probably look to fix that when I do my dry rub, get a little more flavor onto the outside of it that way. It takes away from the meat a little bit, but it also hides the quality issue.
Chuck, ways to fix cheap meat?
Well, I'm with the big, bold, flavored rubs put on for at least 12 hours to let it penetrate into the meat. Yeah, that's the only way. Like I said, I use a combination of 2 rubs by Dizzy Pig that they put out that I've stumbled upon one day trying to get a bad cut of meat, that tastes good for the family. And big bold rub on it and good. Let it sit wrapped in saran wrap or cling wrap for a good 12 hours before you go ahead and cook it.
All right, we'll get back to the regularly scheduled questions here. Guys, do you feel that taking a steak to medium well or perhaps even higher in temperature just basically ruins the whole cut of meat? And we'll go to Brian.
From my personal perspective, yeah,
yes.
I think it does. I think you really start to kill the flavor and just toughen it up to the point of, I don't know why you're eating it at that point.
Finney, is it the worst thing ever to do, take a steak to medium well or well done?
Well, it's one of the worst things, but it's probably not the worst thing to do. But
nothing you would recommend?
What was that?
Nothing that you would recommend?
No, I wouldn't recommend it. I think if you are going to cook it anywhere past medium, then you probably ought to be using a lower temperature just because the meat will get cooked a little more gently. But no, I wouldn't cook anything over medium.
Chuck, is it a waste of money to cook a steak to medium well or well done?
If I'm eating it, yeah, it's a waste because I don't like anything over medium. But since I, cater and I've worked in restaurants, it's whatever the customer wants. If they want it well done, they're going to get it well done. Trust me, I've run into enough people, that say for whatever reason. Well, the worst I heard is that some guy I met, he loves steak, but if he sees any hint of pink or any kind of blood and he eats it, his stomach literally rejects it and he brings it back up. So, anytime I ever cooked for him, it was always well done. Well done, no pink. It was gray all the way through.
Sounds delicious. I think I'd rather vomit than eat that. I would take the vomit. Anyway, it seems like at least you three guys are relatively in the same thickness quadrant for steak. Everybody's, inch and a quarter, inch and a half. I'm personally inch and a half or more, but that's just me. So what type of a time frame are you looking at for your steaks to get done? Coming off the grill, of course, not during the hold time. And we'll go with Brian. General time frames of doneness.
Just in general? I mean,
Yeah,
depending
just
on where I'm cooking it. Yeah, where I'm cooking it through to, somewhere between, if you're getting up in the 1.25 inch, 1.5 range, I'm generally 9 to 11 minutes, 12 minutes.
In total?
Depending on the temperature.
That's total time?
A total time, yeah. That includes flips and turns.
What about you, Chuck?
I'm in about the 12-minute range myself. If, I'm doing a larger than 1.5 inches, say 1.75 inches, 2 inches, I'll actually, sear it off on the grill and then throw it in a 400-degree oven to finish it off, or, move it to another part of the grill. But, yeah, I'm generally in about the 12-minute range, about 6 minutes aside. So it's, 3 minutes turn, 3 minutes flip, and then, again, 3 minutes turn, 3 minutes.
What about you, Finney? General time frame for you?
Well, here I go being different again, but it's going to take me at least a half hour to cook a steak.
8 to 10 days.
8 to 10 days.
Yeah, a week to 10 days, yes. Just because I am cooking at a lower temperature up front, it takes a while to get to the temperature that I'm going to take it off to start with, and then raise the temperature of the grill to sear it. I'm easily looking at a half hour, 45 minutes, but I think it's worth it. So,
all right, so let's go ahead and start finishing up here, or at least the finishing processes here. We'll start with Chuck. You're letting the steak rest before you cut it up? If so, what's your recommended rest time?
15 minutes. Nothing less.
Brian.
I'm in the 10 to 15 minute range, but always let it rest.
All right. Finney?
I'm probably about the same thing. I normally, when I'm in the last portion of the cooking process, I actually warm a plate to put the steaks on, and then I tin it with loosely tinted with foil, and let it sit for 15, 20 minutes.
Is anybody adding steak sauce or perhaps some, rub and oil or something like a finishing sauce that you have with steak? Or is steak just really good by itself and there's no need to accompany it with any types of dips or marinades or whatever else? We'll go to Brian.
Generally, I mean, I'll put a steak on the plate no matter who I'm serving just by itself. I won't put anything on the steak or on the side or anything, but I will serve them options. So there are people, just like we were talking about before, I guess, with restaurants, right? Somebody wants a piece of meat well done, they can get it well done. The same thing here. They want steak sauce, or if you want a compound butter. I love making compound butters, get a piece on nice hot steak, and sometimes that really does melt up nicely. But I'll never do it intentionally and force it down someone.
What about you, Chuck? You finishing it with anything?
Generally, no. Steak should stand off by itself. Good quality cut of meat, with just a simple seasoning. A1 or any kind of barbecue sauce is like anything. Sauce covers a multitude of sins, so, that's usually reserved for the well-done people.
What about you, Finney? Anything that you're adding to the steak? Finishing sauces, compound butters?
No, not really. I'll normally hit it with just a little bit more salt after it's done and a little more pepper. And for me, every once in a while, and it's not that often, I love to put just a little bit of crumbled blue cheese or gorgonzola on there.
That sounds delicious. We'll stay with you for this one since you're kind of dovetailing into it almost. Best side dishes to go with steak. What really helps kind of bring out the flavor of steak when it comes to additional food side dishes?
You're sticking with me, right?
Yes, that's what I meant by we'll stick with you.
Yes, that's what I thought you meant by we'll stick with you. I love mushrooms, either grilled with butter over them or sauteed, some sauteed onions on the side. Anything like that. Normally what I eat with a steak, though, is a baked sweet potato, whether it's done on the grill or in the oven. But I don't know whether that adds adds to the steak flavor, but
It tastes good with it, right?
Yeah, and it's my little healthy bit to go with the steak that's not so healthy.
Brian, what do you like on the side of steak?
Well, I definitely go with the grilled onion or the sautéed onions. I think the caramelization on there and that with the crust of the meat, I think there's a tie together there that really does bring out, the flavor across the two. That and a nice baked potato with some real large grain sea salt. All those flavors are common between the pieces, and they really tie it together.
What about you, Chuck? What do you like on the side of steak?
I actually do a brandied cream mushrooms. They're usually small creminis that are quartered, sautéed to golden brown. Add a little brandy, a little cream, reduce it a little bit. That'll be on the side. And like these other guys, it's a simple baked potato with some butter or sour cream and maybe some steamed broccoli for something green.
All right.
Hey, send me that mushroom recipe.
Okay.
Do any of you guys have any suggestions in regards to beverages that would go well with steak? If some of you guys are into the wine, any suggestions for wines or vintages, beer suggestions, perhaps even liquor, and we'll go back to Brian.
Well, I'm kind of biased because as much as I like a variety of different beers, Jack and Coke is my go-to beverage, which is how I got my handle there. JD old number 7.
Do you like Four Loko, Brian?
Four Loko, is that the watermelon beer?
I don't know. Somebody was writing Four Loko in the chat room. I think it's that one they're trying to ban all across the country. It's the super alcoholic with energy drink in it, so you can't tell you that you're drunk. It's one of my favorite drinks ever. You gotta look at it, but you got to try it out before they ban it across the country.
No, I drink the dark liquors. That way everybody knows I'm drunk.
There you go. Finney, you're kind of a wine snob. What do you like to go with snake in the libation station?
Well, I used to be a wine snob, and then all of a sudden I started drinking what is now $3 Chuck that used to be $2 Chuck, and I really do like that, especially for the money. The Cabernet and the Shiraz. But anyhow, I like good, very hoppy IPAs, some dark ales. I'm more of a beer snob these days than a wine snob, as you can tell by my $3 Chuck comment. But
I guess.
I think it's Stone Brewery or something that does the Arrogant Bastard. They have one called Double Bastard. That is great with steak.
Great names. Double Bastard. Look for that. Chuck, what do you like to go with the libations for a steak?
Well, I'm kind of like Brian. I like Jack and Coke. Jack and Diet Coke. And by the way, Diet and Jack gets you drunker quicker. But as far as a beer, I go with a local Pennsylvania brew called Yuengling Lager. That's probably the best beer that I've found to go with any steak.
Yeah, I definitely love a good 5 or 20 Yuengling myself. But you can't get it here in Ohio. It's like that's a weird thing that's going on over there. But it's like America's oldest brewery, and it really is a very nice amber-colored beer. And again, when I can get my hands on it, I certainly like to do that. Any other thing that you're doing, after the steak is off and you're ready to cut in it that we haven't covered? We'll go back to Chuck.
No. I mean, I've seen people where they'll baste it in butter afterwards, but that's just gilding the lily, and I'm not really into that. So just let it rest and slice it up and eat it.
Brian.
I think probably the big thing, we touched on at the very beginning. While I'm letting it rest there for that 10 to 15 minutes, I'll go out there and crank up the temperature and let the grates start to clean on the grill, char up, and so it can be scraped off.
Finney, anything else that you're doing you haven't told us yet?
No, not really. If it's on the plate resting, the only thing I'm doing is putting the other stuff I'm eating on the plate I'm going to eat off of. So
we'll take one more audience question coming in from Clint in New York. What's your favorite leftovers for sliced steak? Finney.
You have leftovers?
I don't. But obviously,
I've gotten leftovers from my wife before, but
no recipes to help with.
Is.
Yeah, of course, right.
But no, I generally almost no matter what size the steak is that I cook, it's gone when I finish eating, whether the sides are gone or not. So
it's because you're a man.
That's right.
That's right. Brian, any sliced steak leftover tips you can give to Clint in New York?
Actually, what I would typically do if we have leftovers, I like to use those the next day. And again, we don't have leftovers very often, but when we do, I'd like to slice them a little thin and heat them up in a pan, and then use them into some tortillas and just basically make real simple steak tacos.
What about you, Chuck?
Well, we've if there's enough that's left over for the next day, sometimes it gets used for steak and eggs for breakfast, or even slice it thin, heat it up in a pan, and make it like a good Philly cheesesteak out of it too. Put a little cheese over it with some, if there's any of the leftover grilled onions, that goes well too.
And Clint, just in case you were wondering if I have what's left of my steak when I'm eating, I think Rod Gray summed it up best when he said,
nothing.
That's right. Give me a break. I eat all of my steak all the time. All right, Brian and Chuck, before I let you guys run, anything you want to promote, anything you want to get out there to the listening audience right now? The floor is yours, and we'll go to Brian first.
Actually, promoting, no, I'm not going to, but I'll come back to your show another time and promote something. The one tip I would actually...
That's pretty presumptuous of you, Brian.
No, I was volunteering.
Go ahead.
But no, the one thing we didn't talk about, which I think is real important, is at the end of your cook, when you're getting ready to take that meat off the grill, make sure you're taking that thing off before you get to where you want it done to. Because that meat's going to continue to cook when you take it off the grill for the next several minutes, and that temperature is going to keep rising. So if you want it done at 145, don't take it off at 145. Take it off at 138, 140, and it's going to coast on its own.
Very good information there, Brian. Chuck, anything you want to promote or get out there to the general masses right now?
Well, like Brian, I'd like to be back on your show as an expert for something else. But it being that I've, getting up there in years, and I've been catering now barbecue for over 5 years. I get a lot of questions about why aren't I on the barbecue circuit. So next year you're going to see my team, Chuck's Wagon Barbecue, out there on the East Coast doing at least 3 barbecue contests in the Jersey, PA, New York area. First one's looking like Rock City Rib Fest up in Rochester. So
always a tough
I
competition.
figured go out, start with the big boys and then work my way down.
There you go. That's the best way. Win the first one, and you can steamroll the rest of them right back down. I'm going to actually carry Finney over here just for a few minutes, but Brian, Chuck, I appreciate you taking time out tonight to talk about all things steak and continued success in all your endeavors, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, take care. There's Chuck, and there is Brian. And they're out of it. You still there, Finney? I just hang up on Finney? What the hell just happened? Damn it. All right. Sorry about that.
Hey, thanks for hanging up on me.
I don't know what the hell. Oh, you know what? I hit the wrong red button. There's one floating over Chuck's or Brian's name, and that's like the kill all button. So I got Chuck out on his own, and then it's just too many red buttons going on. Do you have the new 5.0 Skype?
I just downloaded a new version this evening, so I don't know what I've got.
Yeah, it's the worst. I think 5.0, that's the newest one out when you go to the website, and I hate it. 4.2 was so much better. This new one is just way too complicated for me. Wanted to carry you over here for a few more minutes here. Chris, you're widely considered, at least amongst my friends, which number 2, that you are the creator of what we have affectionately referred to as the Finney method, or this reverse sear method. And now last hour I was talking with Meathead Goldwyn from AmazingRibs.com, wildly intrigued with this whole method on how you're cooking steak, slow at first and then finishing it off really hot to finish in order to kind of achieve that overall uniform color from top to bottom. So if you could, give us a little bit more in-depth explanation of the process and the steps that you take to do it, so the people listening tonight or will be listening at podcast afterwards at their convenience might be able to apply this coming weekend or whenever the case may be when the mood strikes.
Well, if Meathead was such a fan, he should have gave me a little better write-up when he did his review of the reverse sear, but that's a whole nother story.
I didn't know you were I didn't know you were executive chef in Las Vegas as well.
Oh, great.
That's where he found out about it.
Super duper. Well, Cooks Illustrated takes credit for it. I don't know who else does, but I was doing it before Cooks Illustrated wrote about it, and
look,
we'll just go from there.
Chris, you're preaching to the choir. You don't have to prove anything to me that you're the guy that started it. You're widely recognized on this show as well as across barbecue and grilling forums in this nation, possibly the world, that you are the inventor of the Finney method. That's why they call it the Finney method. Forget reverse sear. That's bullshit. We're talking about the Finney method, the real deal. So give us the breakdown.
Well, basically what you do is you start cooking at a low temperature with your steak, roast, whatever. And I like to do it closer to 200, maybe 225, but you can go as high as like 250. And I mean, you could actually go higher if you wanted, but that's 250 is as high as I would tell somebody to go. And you want to start cooking, and if you're doing a lot of steaks, insert a meat probe into probably the biggest steak you've got to start with. And once your meat starts getting up in the temperature, and it's going to take a while, but depending on how done you want your meat, you want to take it off the cooker about 10 degrees under what your target temperature is. So if you want a medium rare steak, which is around 130, you would take it off at 120 or maybe even a little below. You take it off, tin it, let it rest while you're cranking your grill up. And I cook on ceramic cookers, so I can get my cooker above 650 degrees real easy. And I generally just shoot for as high as I can get it in a certain amount of time. And it usually is getting up to about 650, 700 degrees. And I'll take the meat that's sitting there resting and just put it back on the grill and sear it real quick on both sides and take it off, and I'm done. I let it rest again, but I don't even really think it needs to, because the inside of the meat hasn't come up in temperature that much from the sear because it was so quick. But that's basically, in essence, the quick and dirty version of the reverse sear, Finney method, whatever you want to call it. It's cooking it low and slow to get it close to the temperature you want it to be, taking it off, letting it rest, searing it, taking it off, and eating it.
And in your experience, this definitely provides a better overall steak enjoyment factor for you to do it like this.
Oh, yeah, it does. When you're doing the low and slow portion of the cook, there's something called capsaicins in the meat that are actually proteins. And when the meat is slowly coming up the temperature during that first part of the cook, they're actually breaking down the other meat proteins. So it's actually tenderizing or aging your meat as you're cooking it, instead of like actually dry aging it or wet aging it in your refrigerator in advance. You're doing it during the first part of your cook.
Well, it sounds like an absolutely fantastic method. And again, you're looking at what, round about 35, maybe 40, 45 minutes in total from start to finish?
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, the lower your beginning temperature is, the longer it'll take. But as a general rule, that's about what it takes to cook one. I mean, and is that really that much extra time to not get a better steak out of it? So,
not in my opinion. Look, when you're doing it this way, is it then safe to say, going all the way back to the first hour and conversation that I was having with Meathead about, barbecue being the umbrella that everything else falls underneath, that you're barbecuing your steak first and then you're grilling it?
Well, I don't really agree with what he was saying, that grilling and barbecuing are the same thing. I know Adam Perry Lang says the same thing, but I don't agree. Grilling and barbecuing are different. And while maybe you can sort of consider the first part of this cook barbecuing, I don't. I think it's just the first stage of my grilling. So, I think barbecuing is something that takes a whole lot longer than what a steak cook takes. You can call things by the same name, and it doesn't make them the same. So
can we call it all the whole thing? Can we just say it's open fire cooking and leave it at that?
I would love to call it that. Yes.
All right, Finney, we're making a declarative statement tonight with enthusiasm. It's not barbecue, it's not grilling, it's just fire cooking.
That is correct.
So,
although you can do the reverse sear in the oven if you want to.
Well, I mean, you could. Well, of course you could, but I mean, at that point, then it's not the same. It's like oven cooking. It's not live fire. Well, unless you have gas, right? Then gas is live fire, right?
Well, I don't know if a gas oven is actually considered live fire, but
well, I see flames, right? I mean, it's live fire.
Well, do you in a gas oven?
Yeah, I own a gas. My whole house is gas.
Well, my house is gas too, but my oven's electric and my cooktop is gas.
Well, I don't know. What can I tell you? All I know is we're going to start. If you do this weekend, I'm going to go fire cook some grills this weekend, and I hope you are too, Finney.
Oh, I hope so too. Well, I don't get to do it enough, but
I know I'm certainly not. Believe me, it's going to be 30 degrees out here. There's no way in hell I'm going to get out there and live fire cook steaks up here in Cleveland. So anyway, Finney, appreciate you staying over. Anything you want to plug or promote? Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say hey to Clint up in New York. So
hey to Clint. Clint's the man. Side.
And actually, if I'm going to plug anything, if anybody needs one of the new Maverick ET732s, I will have them for sale on my website at www.ironpigbarbecue, that's ironpigbbq.com, and under the products category.
All right. So tell me about this new Maverick deal. What the hell?
Well, it sounds like they took everything that people have complained about over the years, the range of the unit. They basically tripled it. It now has an alarm to tell you if you're out of range from the sending unit. So you would actually get an alarm if you're not close enough to the sending unit to pick up the signal.
Right.
And they moved the switch out from under the battery cover, which I never understood why anybody complained about that, because the people that would complain about it would go buy one of the True Temps that you can't turn off at all. So, that was just silly to me. But anyway, and I would also like to promote Superior Smokers, because they've been very good to me in my last 2 years of competition barbecue cooking.
When are these new Maverick thermometers going to be for sale? John Chips wants to know.
They are supposed to be for sale the middle of December, but if history repeats itself, Maverick is bad about not meeting their dates when they say new products will be on the market, because they have to come through customs, and that slows them down about 2 weeks. So my guess is we will see them the beginning of January.
All right, beginning of January, straight from the Iron Pig's mouth. It's Chris Finney.
But
Iron. Go ahead.
They're supposed to be here mid-December.
All right, so it could be anywhere from a month to 2 weeks from now.
That is correct.
All right. Nevertheless, if I don't speak to you, have a great holiday season. And again, it's Chris Finney, ironpig@bbq.com. Keep checking his webpage, and you can get your hands on the newest Maverick thermometer and a quick plug to Superior Smokers as well. Chris, always a pleasure, buddy.
All right, man. It's great to be here. I enjoy talking to you and with the other two panelists.
All right. Take care. There he is. It's Chris Finney. Guy started the Finney method, for crying out loud. See what happens when you don't go ahead and trademark your ideas, copyright. Look, Traeger was putting oil-flavored crap in their pellets, and they trademarked it, but they didn't tell anybody about it. But, nobody else is going and putting oil additives into their wood pellets to make them taste like apple or taste like hickory. I mean, who wants to use the real wood? Forget about it. Let's use oil flavoring in our wood. We'll save money. We'll copyright, we'll trademark it so nobody can ever use it, but we'll never mention it. That's not weird, is it? All right, then. That's going to do it for me. Thanks to... where the hell did it go? Here we go. Sorry about that. Thanks to Chris Finney, ironpigbbq.com. Thanks to Brian Pollock, west of Chicago, and Chuck Dorak, Easton, Pennsylvania, breaking down the steak round table. John, I didn't get you a price. Just go check out his website or shoot him an email. Very easy to get a hold of. Is that Chris Finney? They were breaking down the steak round table. Also, thanks to Meathead Goldwyn in the first hour. AmazingRibs.com. Lots of great information there. Figure out where you want to navigate to, and there'll be loads of information at your fingertip. And again, that's AmazingRibs.com. Next 2 weeks, potentially on remote from the Buckeye City of Columbus, Ohio. We'll keep you informed on that. Big shows planned upcoming. And until next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.